Hello everyone. Today's talk will be focused on how the texture of reality is a very sensitive thing. And so what that means is that when we look at what is real for us, we are confronting imagery. And so that imagery, based on our experiences, is relevant to us in both personal and non-personal ways. So for example, you have both seen an ocean, but also drank water. You have seen the sky, but also been in a plane. So it's very important to see that we have access to imagery through different ways. And the creativity is in actuality certain fixed points relating to one another in very new ways, I guess. But again, it is all present in the same knowing, similar to how, regardless of all the changes that have happened in your life, you're still a you that you recognize or are aware of. So in other words, when you look at reality, there are different ways you can work with it, because the nature of the ideas are simply suggesting what reality means. The minute I begin talking about truth, there is a holographic, subtler projection of a certain form. Of course, if you begin asking for truth from others, there could be so many truths. But it's very important to see that the nature of reality is one where your involvement with life gives you the awareness, because it's a directly experiential thing. It's as if you've suddenly jumped in the pool and just realized how deep it is, So it's very recognized to know that sometimes you can't know things regardless of how rationally you figure it out, You could read about the experience of eating an orange, but it doesn't help you like cutting the fruit up and eating it, It's very important to see that we forget simple things because our complexity thinks we figured it all. It's very important to have a sense of balance. You must see that balance also is a natural thing. It's you being aware of yourself and letting things happen, which is a very Lao Tzu kind of thing to do. In a sense, have action through inaction. You're focused both at times. For example, if you choose to concentrate on something, shifts your attention to a new association with what you're refabricating as the moment, as your environment. So what I mean by that is that the minute you go inside a new room, it's as if you're like a new person. It's as if the objects to you are meaning different things, or they look different. If I created rooms with different colors and you went into each one, you would be able to tell me how you felt different in each, because your response and your reaction to it was different. So similarly, we can take such an idea and recognize that thought is something in which we are putting shape to. And so that means we can have a flexibility. Man is recognizing how to be in his abstract world, similar to how man looks at his God. So the concept of a God never limited creativity. It actually inspired creativity, And there have been many works done in the name of a creator, because that was the inspiration of man. I mean, they looked around, they're like, okay, what else? What's the point of this? And they're like, the creator, because we're created, And so the concept of God or creation is never something to in a sense, judge by human history. It was their natural intention. It was what those people came up with. In other words, if you are giving yourself freedom of speech, why are you not giving freedom of speech to the people who lived back then? Whatever happened is simply the flux of the world. And so we must not judge beings and even ideas. The way you learn how to handle an idea is not to think about it, not to focus on it, but simply be. In other words, not be yourself, be all that is, So that moment where that kid probably asked, I how do I do a certain thing? And they told them to be confident, and he asked, what does confidence mean? And they said, be yourself. You will see that when they say be yourself, they're still giving an unknown element because the self is not clear. That is why the person is asking. But if you tell someone, be the moment, be all that is, you will be giving them deepest lesson. Because regardless, that kid would go to whatever scenario he is, and he will suddenly see the reason they said be yourself, the reason they said be the moment is because you tune into what you're doing in that moment. So my talks will be much slower if I plan it. I wouldn't be able to talk the way I do if I plan it. I would be able to make notes, but to talk at a point where the imagery is moving, you have to be very present. I have to be very present in the sense that I have no ideas, but I'm aware of what's flowing, similar to how I'm aware of the space around me right now in this park. You see, the lessons that I learned from stillness and silence is many ways to approach as the observer movement and noise. So suddenly sound got a different meaning for me. Suddenly my own movement had a new meaning, and simply this was a sense of existential confrontation. So what that means is that when you suddenly look at yourself and you have a problem and you can't solve that problem, let's say you failed or you haven't tried something or you've tried it and you can't do it, you will look at life and you will see people who are doing it and you will wonder, why can't I do it? And so then by saying and accepting why you can't do it, you will look for external solutions. You will try to look for the answer in books, from teachers, gurus and stuff. And so you will see that you have just taken one path. There are many paths into different phases and states of consciousness. These paths work from both sides of the polarity and also the ranges in between. So the many different ways that a being can be realized is simply the spectrum between all the good and bad that being has in regards to the duality you conceive. So what that means is that a child at an early age can become much more realized of the nature of reality than an adult who is more convinced through ideology. It's as if, as the child is growing up and going through a school, what is happening is that he's not just making friends with school, he's absorbing ideology that is becoming the veil of his eyes. And that is very important because you need to know yourself in a way where you are always free. And so free means to be also free from an idea, free from an imagery, and in a sense free from that which is creating duality. And so back in the day, the yogis and the mystics understood this. They understood that duality was the inspiration for us to go and find all that is, the essence of all that is. And so once you go find the essence of all that is, you come to a dynamic where you see, okay, am I really going on this journey or am I just making up this journey in my mind? And so when you look at that option, you see both possibilities are possible, because just like how you can work really hard to, for example, get a project done, you can also, in your subtle or subconscious mind, are working really hard and are projecting lives. It are projecting realities. It's as if that moment where I thought that it's like, we don't recognize it because we're not sensitive. But for example, if I visualize, let's say, a very, crystal infused, light infused, let's say very extraterrestrial bird. Let's say I just visualize this, and the bird has many different lights changing inside it at the same time, So let's say I vision this, and it is not real in this reality. In the box that I have chosen to be my normal life, it does not make sense. And so reality is when you compare information and it does not fit the patterns you have created from that very information. So you will see that this abstraction, this glowing bird that is in front of me is real for me because the imagery had to come from somewhere. Do you see that? There's something real that is projecting it. So communication is not artful communication. Communication has the hidden depths. That moment when that person, for example, says, I love you to another person, there is such vastness. It's as if there are canyons being missed. And so it is the job of lovers to actually make themselves real for one another. But you will see reality is complicated because there's a part of that experience which is very fixed and which is very external. And this solidity does not give an option of the experience, but it's much slower. So what that means is, right, in this world, it's not that we're in a world of no dreams. People dream, and you, let's say, have a vision. Let's say right now you choose to become the greatest violin player. You don't know anything about violin, but your mind likes it. You've heard some soundtracks on YouTube and you like it, you know. So let's say if you wanted to start violin, you would see that you would eventually find out the meaning of why persistence beats resistance. If you naturally like the violin, you will see, regardless of how lazy you are, you will be pulled. Something in you has decided to accept that reality. But why are you not suddenly becoming a guitar player or a drum player? You have the potential to be them because you are not accepting involvement in that reality. So a lot of extrasensory perception is actually there. Energy is not going anywhere. It's just that you are not allowing your reality to shift because you are much more comfortable in a box. And so who is chaotic enough to, in a sense, destroy the box of order? You know, and so you will see if your idea does not have the ability. So if you go in the mirror and you're like, I can't do it, you will still look in something in you. You will look for a power in the self. And so you will see this is where if you give power to an external source, you are just, it's not that there's anything wrong. It's just that karma was a game you play with yourself. It's that moment where you chose to do something and that action led to infinite other actions which you're still lost in if you do not choose to tune out to a collectivity. So what that means is that all karmic stories are suggesting an individual body hurting an individual body, then in some fluctuation there is a return of that same equivalence, you know. And so we do not need to look at Newton's laws to simply understand that regardless of any cause and effect dynamic, as one intention is put forth, as you decide to walk to that other side of the park, your vision has already created the potential of your steps there. And so, in a sense, multidimensionality must begin with your own authentic intention. So it is not something for someone else to come and preach it. That is not authentic and it cannot be done. The only way some understanding, some deep understanding can become useful for you is if your own understanding is flowing towards it. So for example, I personally was raised in a very, in a world where Islam was the focus for a long period of my life. That was the interpretation I was comfortable to use, not for imagery, just for the knowing that I had in being aware of it at that time. The concept of a fool is meaningful, is only, you know, it's only real for a human mind. But for consciousness, a fool is one of the most allowed expressions. A fool is like a juggernaut for consciousness. But a very graceful juggernaut, of course. Because you will see a fool doesn't want to do much. It is satisfied with the reality of its presence. And so that is why some honest fools have been very close to realize sages. Because an honest fool is just missing the devotion to self to get smarter. That's it. You will see that in observing what everything you're seeing or considering individual means for you, it will all come down to one moment of knowing. So what that means is that if you know, if that moment you look at something and someone asks you a question and someone says an answer and you're wondering if that answer is true, you will realize regardless, your certainty is always in a moment. Because the problem is relevant in a moment. How many times have we as human beings have had problems, and the next day, totally, it was like we were out of that room. We were not in that vicinity to even have that relationship be real. Until suddenly, for example, we saw what was actually causing or some relevant thing to it, and suddenly, oh my God, we're back in the room. What I noticed happened to me is that the way psychology, psychotherapy, and any external teaching tells you, it doesn't matter what the teaching is or who your guru is. It doesn't matter if the wind is making a face or that child who doesn't even know you. It's very important to simply see that consciousness in its presence never needed names to begin or end with, and so worlds were their own creation. And so a wise man understood that once there was broken glass, if you step on the glass, of course it will be real for you, the pain. But if you walk past it, or if you are aware of it, if you take the simple concept of mindfulness and allow it to guide you into the most complex endeavors, you will see that the texture of this reality is actually your greatest understanding. So when you begin actually looking for what life means, if you are a person who has the persistence beats resistance attitude, you will see that it's as if you have suddenly become a being that wants to know what it is regardless of the world, you know. And so when that longing comes, it's a beautiful moment, because it's as if the butterfly sat on your head and you don't know it's a butterfly, and you're like, oh my God, what's on my head? And so you're going for a journey, you know. And so the beginning of the roller coaster is one of the most important times to enjoy, but not to also forget that suffering is inspiration until you're beyond that suffering. Do not try to interpret the concept of eternity, guys, as an idea. You know, I mean, poets can be very playful, and I, of course, really enjoy poetry that communicates the concepts of infinity and eternity or points to it. But you must see that they are doing it in a playful manner, because language is being utilized by a conscious person playfully. It's never being utilized seriously, unless if the communication is with the intention of just immediately to say things. So what that means is, for example, when poetry is being written, you see that there's more of a sense of unknown, and so there's more room for you to abstract. For example, I will suddenly let's see what the poet's mind would say. Suddenly, you know, that drop of rain was an ocean on its own. And as it fell, so did an angel tear remember its wings. Do you see? It's just a playful bringing of just irrelevant ideology, but not irrelevant. Relevant through a deeper gaze. Sometimes irrelevant things can be create great meaning later on. What that means is that there's been many times I've written something and it hasn't made sense to me, for example, in the year that I wrote it, but the next year, suddenly, randomly, I found that page in a certain moment, and bam, it's as if a self-communication that had just been passed down from a different sense of space and time, a crazy deja vu moment, actually. But again, poetry has more of an abstract region, but suddenly, sometimes I see that if I really want to say things, and it's one of those apocalyptic moments where I want to say everything before, you know, the end, I would see that my communication would actually not be poetic, would be very, very authoritative in presenting the imagery that needs to be there. You see, the grace of a being that is aware of the sense that of the observer without an identification to ideology simply becomes a man whose words are just words. Everything flows. It does not mean suffering does not exist, but your experience of suffering has new dimensions. It's as if suffering is no longer the same suffering because your awareness has expanded. It's as if David Lynch's golf ball has just turned into a bowling ball. And so he's fascinated by how a multidimensional idea will lead to a multidimensional experience, to then show that consciousness plays with itself, to show that through playfulness the dimensions open up. What that means is that if you put a person in a room and a person in another room, you will see that a person in the room, their mind will begin creating meaning of where they are. The mind is always doing that. Sometimes you're conscious of it, sometimes you're not, Regardless, there is meaning. So if someone asks you a question, you have something working in your mind that is telling you. Now, when I say working, you must see that what really works is your immediate direct experience. Nothing else is more real than that. So you must immediately see that all avenues of distinction fade in a new sense of awareness, that its intelligence is as if if your whole life everything's been horizontal, suddenly you've realized the vertical. It has no relevance to the horizontal, but total relevance to how you, as a greater observance, navigate in this plane of reality. It's very important. Man is still treating his world like a box, which is crazy. Because you will see that if you treat it, even like a human, if you treat reality, the physical dimension, as compassionately as you would treat the most cherished being, you would suddenly see objects will change. Your synchronicities is simply an expression of how you're being aware of something that you're doing indirectly. That action, regardless, has direction. Even though if I point something to you indirectly, suddenly you find that thing that I'm pointing to directly, suddenly it has direction. So what that means is it doesn't matter how you get up the mountain, we're all going to the same peak. And that peak is an awareness that your existence is awareness. And so the mind of man never needed to be a definition, to be segmented with. Guys, language is a sacred art. And I don't want to say sacred in the way, but it's a delicate tool. It's a sharp tool. Parents teach you how to speak, but they can never teach you how to get comfortable with it. The samurai master will give the student his sword, but will never fight it, never use it for him. Do you know? It's as if you are given a life, you're given imagery, you're given a memory, you're given everything that you can be aware of in this moment. What are you going to do with it? And you will see, if you choose to base it on first creating yourself in the moment as an idea and then giving that idea life, you will fear. You will create dynamics of field. You will have energy fluctuations. If you have stress, know that you're not utilizing your biology properly. And so you will see you have the option of, in a very segmented way of thinking, try to go get separate food, or you can align your thought by realizing that you are beyond thought, by realizing that condition you're in cannot define you. You are a new moment of expression. You can always stand up once you look within. And so you will see that it becomes very playful, because you can work with different intensities of reality, and so multidimensionality becomes how you have lived, which is now showing you how you're living. And so this existential relationship is an unspeakable one, It's as unspeakable as perhaps that moment where only a gaze was meaningful. Only that look in the eyes of that person was meaningful. As consciousness, your transparency must be found with your authentic ability to bask in your silence and stillness. As you do, pay attention to your breathing, and you need nothing else, guys. Mr.Within is telling you, sit down, be still, be calm, and just be aware of your breathing. You will see that the inhalations and exhalations will very playfully transform the movements of your thoughts. So if you just completely, with utter focus, put away any other a thought and brought all your attention to just your breathing, you will see it's as if suddenly you will go to a point where thought stops and you're just aware of the breathing, but then as thought comes back, it aligns with your breathing. It's as if, as you're just aware of your breathing, you just have created a multidimensional vehicle in your subtler levels to in a sense, not move around, but to flow around. The subtler plane, the subtler depths of your mind, and in the depth of that abstraction, it is not linear because you're just flowing in a greater intelligence. It's as if you are looking through the eyes of a greater self. And as you are, this self is not individual. It's as if this greater self knows all to be the same. And that is how you know what it knows. That is how we have concepts of remote viewing going around. That's just why you have coincidences. It's because we, in our observance, in a sense, playful approach of exploration towards what is real, are discovering that we are breaking layers of our own illusion to move towards our own absolute entrance into our totality. And so this is simply how the individual consciousness is becoming aware of its collective presence. It's a very beautiful moment. It's a moment where many tears come because you are suddenly rewinding back into your memory and acknowledging all the times that you thought you were incapable and you realize you forgot to be compassionate to yourself. It's as if you were trying to be such a good person that you did not for a second look back and see that you were not being real for yourself, for example. Ideas are very powerful things because they can become real for you in the sense that they will define you. So you will see that a person who is hateful is just self-reflectively projecting an image of something that is compelling him to do that action. Do you see? And so similarly with the person on the other side of the spectrum, the very good person, the person who is loving, will see that if his love is covered in form like an idea, the archetype will be the illusion. The what's on the lens will be what will also be shown. So in a sense, how I can say this is that if you were a unique design, your awareness to that design originates for your awareness to some design. And so your awareness to that some design is a collective awareness. And so there has been the concept of, for example, God bodies, the concept of avatars, for a concept of human beings to quit their jobs and to move with the rhythm of their natural self. To, for example, do that thing where something within him was telling them. And so you see, your God body is actually how the free will is moving to the sense of the divine will, in the sense that you're realizing, no, you're not an individual movement when everything around you is moving. When everything exists, you exist alongside everything. And so that is why we must look within and find Mr. Within, because this understanding of this core unified essence, which is a greater intelligence beyond rationality and linearity, in confronting the chaotic ends of our non-linear vision, we may be found in the pure lands, which very beautifully can be said are nothing. Clouds of nothing. They're just clouds of nothing. And so what that means is that your acknowledgement and your confrontation of reality is breaking everything to show you the absolute. And that is when clarity becomes not just what you're aware of in the present moment, but your presence. Simply how you look at others is just communicating the clarity that you have received from your external dimension in your internal communication. So what that means is that you have, in a sense, it's as if you if you had friends in two different places, you've just gotten the, you're all hanging around in the same place now, for example. You're all at your hangout spot. So what that really means is that you're all present in the same space regardless of your individuality. Because right now, mankind is not acknowledging or confronting reality in a very able way because he does not see himself able. It's as if we're saying, all right, I'm a broken thing, let me try to not see a broken world. No, if we are trying to see a better world, that means there's a better self. That means there was never a negative self. Do not constantly, bang your head between good and bad. That's a game of the mind. You play with yourself. If you're trying to prove truth to others, if you're trying to preach, that will create a form of blindness. If you're trying to suddenly make another person inferior very uncompassionately to, in a sense, prove that you know what's going on more, that is a very unnecessary act. And so you will see there are some, how would I say it? Let me say it with playful imagery. There are some cosmic generals and heavenly fathers that do not care what man does. They don't care how the creation plays in its spectrum. The whole point is it has allowance to all of it. But if the creation is found to be present among other moments of creation and is affecting their projected realities, suddenly you will see an unnecessary act will be immediately refined. It's as if you suddenly do something unnecessary, something you know that you shouldn't, just because you know it, it's an innate knowing, you will see that the projection of this reality by something within you will just, how would I say it? It will correct itself. And so you will see it's as if that is when the lords of karma show themselves, because your holographic reality, the edges of it, has began through your awareness of a more absolute experience, similar to how, for example, the son broke something and he knew that when the father was coming home, oh man, there was going to be trouble, So it's like when that moment happened, you would see it's as if that son knew that there was a very loved part of him coming. But when that part of him was coming, your form will be handled in the form that it was brought in here. So you will see what many people have thought to be very harsh experiences are just experiences of combinations of self, which are just communicating to the same energy point. So what that means is in science, let's say we are only the light that we're seeing is just certain part of the spectrum right now. Now let's say you simultaneously also exist in many different ways, and so there's a very complex multidimensionality which is very hard to explain, but I would kind of say it like this. It's as if on a very subtler plane, three people are creating the experience of one person here. This is not because of the people. This is because the planes of reality are connected. And so this is an understanding that is very hard to linearly grasp, but intuitively, if you are intuitively, something in life is just pulling you towards this, you are a very, very, very vast treasure revealer. Because it's as if you are a human being moving from your ideology into being the awareness of how all planes of existence connected. It's as if you're moving towards the transcendent eyes of how the plane of reality evolves. Because just as how the ape is evolving, the whole conception of all considerations are evolving. What that means is scientifically, experimentally, man went and looked at a monkey and just assumed that it became it. But it did not realize that conception is not just in one dimension. So the fact that suddenly the human being changed, it's not that even aliens came in, it's just that the way the energy was individualized suddenly shifted when the vertical, it's as if, okay, take it like this. For example, all those moments in reality where we are, for example, told that some child was suddenly born, or some being, for example, in Tibet, Guru Padmasambhava, at the age of 8, he was unborn. He just manifested and he was just teaching lake spirits. He was like a very, very cool being, at the age of 8, manifesting, and enlightening all the lake spirits, manifesting through a lotus in the middle of the lake, Or, for example, how Jesus came into manifestation and many prophets. But again, guys, let me show you why that's significant. Because that's as if everything is horizontal and suddenly there's a vertical conception. It's as if all our intentions of existence, all our urges of existence right now are in a horizontal dimension. But they are also being kept vertically as well. You're just not aware of it, But the vertical dimension you will see that the vertical dimension also is a reality that is keeping you. So what that means is that, for example, physically, the mother could have been Mary, and then non-physically, what was presented as an intention of a greater knowing, would be simply the intersection of those dimensions. So you must realize that all of us are being manifested, and even throughout the day, through a very multidimensional setting. It's very hard for us to linearize this, but it is much easier for us to linearize it if we realize that we can create temporary vehicles through geometric application in our subtler planes, and then from that linearity to find it. It's as if man right now can't explore his imagination because he forgets. But how you build, not just because of you forget, just because also the conditioning and how the program at first is recognizing itself. But suddenly you will see that we are in a multidimensional setting, and it's as if the dot has many infinite lines going through it, Or the sphere is present among the dance of spirals, and you will suddenly see, or it will be seen that the dot will be the experience of all the lines. It will even be the plane of conception. You don't recognize it, but you right now, your forehead is the edge of a plane of reality. You don't recognize it. Because the plane is made from lines that are made from dots. So the dot at the edge of the corner of the plane is Earth. That's simply it. Earth is one of those planets where it's on the edge, where many planes are connected to it. So, there are many types of Earths right now, which there are intentions. So right now, as I'm speaking, my voice is not just projecting in one reality, but it's as if not just the beings from different realities are tuning in, but it's that the planes of existence is being kept. So what that means is, if you wanted to talk to the beings of the whole world, if you had a message to tell the whole world, if you wanted a purpose for humanity, if you wanted to give a Martin Luther King speech, but you weren't Martin Luther King, you will see now is a time where there's too many people to get in one room. And so you suddenly are in the dilemma that you can't. So you do not talk to the intelligence of the individual people. You don't, sometimes my greatest speeches are to the plane of existence, which is my deep meditations in a sense. So what that means is that I speak to my moment, which is the plane is the navigation of all the planes of my conception. And so then the command is coming from a direct source. It's as if the sun's voice is heard by all planets, but the Earth's voice is heard by a few. So what I mean by that is we are thinking that our communication right now should be, in a sense, from us assuming that we are a cause point and moving towards an effect. But if we see that the sun has always communicated, so if people just stop expressing, if everyone in the world just stopped and began receiving, we will see that our transparent awareness will give us an experience of a subtler plane. So those people who were sun worshippers in Egypt, in gazing at the sun, were adjusting their subtler levels. It's as if their imagination was another world they were present in. Because the sun is communicating to all, and the sun is being kept through a central sun. The sun has no father. But the sun is very important because, let's say as if, again, like the sun is speaking. And so if the sun is speaking, mankind is not here to learn a lot from the earth. All those people who were also thinking that, oh my God, we're here to connect with the earth and we need to put our fingers in the soil to become one with with nature, you know. That is a great exercise, and that is actually very needed at this time. But in let's say 4,000 years, we will be much focused in more galactic work. Right now, we're focused on planetary work. This planetary work is actually not planetary work because the human being is recognizing its internal dimension. So what that means is humanity is given a gift which it will later on realize how it's a gift. But Mr. Within is somehow saying it right now. So what I mean by that is that you as a human being are gifted with internal dimensions. So what that means is that you are given an external world where you can infinitely move in, and you're given an internal sense of infinity that can always be a conception through the greater observance that it is. So what I mean by that is mankind will go, let's say in 2,000 years, I think. Look at this talk, I think in 2,000 years, this is crazy. I, in a sense, know in 2,000 years, what will happen is that mankind will suddenly jump into it. It's like right now, I'm talking about consciousness, and it will shoot forward. It's not even me. It's as if that's what the plane of existence wants, you know? And so we will see that we will suddenly become aware of our internal dimensions, but after becoming aware of it, we will come back as new luminous emissaries into our external reality. So that being who became aware of its internal dimensions tapped into an intelligence where that individuality was energized to a degree where it was given many simultaneous presences of itself, in which all colors were kept in one being. You will begin seeing metaphors are the real prophets because they are showing you to a direct experience, just like that movie moment where this ship in space was coming that was just huge, you know. Mankind must begin recognizing that his imagery is just the spice of life. His logic and rationality and all his sciences in regards to external reality are just the spice of life, you know. So for example, I study science not in the sense to prove anything, but just because it's very playfully, it is relevant and exciting in the dimension, in certain areas of focus, you know. And many general areas of focus as well, because this reality is following physical laws. So the physical aspect of it, science has it spot on. But when science tries to, you know, it's as if scientists totally understand one dimension of thinking, but when another dimension comes, for example, spirituality, it is madness, you know? And it's because the scientist as an individual being will not have the tolerance to find himself real in another person's reality. And so there have been many beings, and very few, not very few actually, but many few written down or recorded, who were given other bodies to work with. So they were allowed, just like how Carl Sagan's Flatlander idea presented itself, in a two-dimensional world, once the being recognizes of its third-dimensional presence, it has the ability to manifest anywhere. So just like that Rubik's Cube, you can play with your reality, but at the same time, it's your own exploration. So do not look for too much external interpretation. Do not look for someone giving you a thumbs up. No. Your silence and stillness are the only thumbs up you're gonna get. And those are the greatest companions in this journey, because as you go deeper within yourself, you will see that the present moment will become significant. Because if you're aware, you will see that you do not want to get caught in games. So if you just be aware of the imagery of your stress and depression, it'll create a problem for you. So it's how you are aware of how you're aware, and that adjustment that will occur through an instant of your own knowing and self-allowance, that you would see we are no longer affected by the winds of time. When the window of space is open, our clarity is the moment which is our platform to any experience of any conception. Your multidimensionality cannot begin unless you empty the Zen Master's cup and then see the potential of all that you are, then to be, then to do. So you will see that, for example, you living this normal life with just a preference. It's just like a preference, because as consciousness, it is not real in that way. So the way I'm even communicating it is because my certainty has been experiential enough, so I'm very playful. I see it everywhere. That's why I'm communicating it. But at the same time, it's nothing to communicate too much, because if I do, and this is where gurus must really have kind of dropped the ball at certain points in history, because they suddenly let the student dissolve into the teaching too much, too soon. So what that means is that if I want to go study, let's say, Tibetan mysticism suddenly, and just all the different lineages, I would see that if I am telling you a story, let's say I'm telling you a story about that bird, that celestial bird I saw, I visualized in front of me. And guys, just a very quick hint, visualization, how are you able to visualize it if it's not there? Anyways, you kind of see that, for example, that bird, it is an idea that is kept relevant based on how much the communicator has emphasized it. So the guru or the teachers of the future must help you. You as a human being must help your fellow man to not get caught in words too much. And what that means is that we all must have an ability to be before we think about what must be done. And so this is a very natural thing. This is as natural as how laughter is the best medicine for a drunken man. Oh man. Anyways, my friends, it's very important to see that you are the vision of the greatest step. And so do not falter when you never could. Be aware, be observant, expand your situational awareness, read up on certain ideologies that serve you, allow them to become companions, and dive in your internal experience as if a very natural way. First, call it alone time. Then if you want to get more serious about it because life is looking more exciting for you because you're asking deep questions, then pursue meditation. And also listen to more of my talks, because that is the atmosphere. And that is the type of person who I'm really communicating to, because advanced communicators are not just angry rebels who are just shouting around. They're actually some of the most silent beings you would see, but they are externally silent. Internally, they are the voice of the cosmos. And if that bird could transform suddenly into this lion made of white light and galaxies, its roar would be the knowing that is looking through your eyes. And recognize that we are here to move capably, efficiently, And a very capable person is not listening to his incapable selves and his self-talk. He is adjusting his incapable selves, like that CEO that knew that there was no time because his company had to live. And so management was an instant command. And so you can give your life an instant command by not trying to control external reality, by taking things as the most fittest, in the social survival, but to see that the father never needed to hit his son. There never needed to be a punishment dynamic in your sense of thought and self-thought. Allow yourself to look through new eyes and in new ways. And remember, regardless of how you navigate, the pilot of consciousness is already there. Much blessings and namaste.